Hey everyone, Joe Lawrence of Business Credit Workshop, and in this video I want to share with you 3 steps that you really need to take, especially in today's lending environment, in order to get unsecured business lines of credit and business credit cards. So I broke this process down into 3 steps. Get compliant, build your scores, and find local lenders. Step 1, get compliant. What does that mean? Well, basically, you want to build up your company in such a way that banks are willing to lend to you, right? We've interviewed thousands and thousands of banks all across the US, and we ask them, are you lending? What programs are you offering? What are your underwriting requirements? And things like that. So we were able to come up with some basic steps that pretty much every lender needs you to accomplish before you can apply for business credit. What are some of these steps? Well, the first step would be to make sure that your business is built in such a way that banks are willing to lend to you, is if you can, create your company as a neutral entity. If you already created your company, then let's work with what you have. But if you are starting from scratch, create the company in such a way that banks are willing to lend to you. What that really means is that if you can create your company, your entity as a neutral entity with a neutral name, it's a lot easier to get financing than it is if you're in a very industry specific or restricted industry. So a really simple example of this, a lot of people are in the real estate business, right? So if your company's called ABC Real Estate versus if your company is called ABC Management, right? Management is a lot more neutral and it's a lot easier to get funding if you're in a restrictive industry if you have a more neutral name. When you're picking your line of business, ideally you want to pick a neutral line of business. Give yourself some wiggle room. It could be something like business management or asset management or property management. Right now, if you put on the primary line of business that you're flipping houses, it's a lot harder to get funding than if your company is doing other things like asset or portfolio management or even business management. When we say get compliant, another big tip that's really important is some of the basics of the housekeeping for your company. Make sure that your company has a phone number, right? Not a cell phone number, but a real business landline. It can be a VoIP, through Freedom Voice or Ring Central or whatever, but make sure you have a phone number. Ideally, I like to use local numbers. You don't have to use a local number. You could use an 800 number, but I like to work with local community banks and credit unions. And as a result of that, we typically get local phone numbers, right? So you can get a local phone number, make sure your voicemail is set up, make sure the phone number is listed with the 411 database, make sure when a bank looks into your company, they could find you online. You're on Yellow Pages, you're on Super Pages. So you've created the company, you have a neutral line of business, and you're creating your online presence. You got your local phone number set up, you're 411 listed on that database, and when a lender Googles your company, they can find you on Yellow Pages, on Super Pages, on Google My Business, all of those different websites. Preferably, you would have a website. It's not required, but it's definitely more professional if your company has a professional domain name like abcmanagement.com and a professional email address like your name at abcmanagement.com or info@abcmanagement.com. So next up with getting compliant is make sure that you have all of the local, municipal, county, state, federal, any licenses that you are required. Make sure you have that taken care of. Make sure you have your operating agreements in place and things like that in case you get asked for formation documents. And when you're looking into getting your licenses and things like that and getting compliant, make sure that your company is in good standing with the Secretary of State. Okay, if you're in the state where I am, we have to pay an annual filing fee every single year. So make sure you're compliant, make sure your company's set up right, it's got a phone number, it's got local listings, and all of that. Because from there, you can move to the second step. So the second step is building up your scores. Now I put scores here because it's not just business credit scores that we want to help you build in order to get approved for business credit cards and lines of credit, but also personal credit scores. Now you might say, hey, I thought business credit is separate from personal credit, and it is. It's the business credit that I can help you obtain is not going to show on your personal credit report, okay? However, if you're doing a no-doc or unsecured business line of credit or business credit card, you're not showing financials, you're not showing tax returns, the bank does look at a blended score between your business and personal score, okay? So what we like to use is a service called NAV. It's NAV. I like to use a service called NAV because it allows us to do 2 things. One, track and monitor our business credit scores and personal credit scores. But secondly, it helps me boost up my business credit scores. So if you can get a subscription to NAV, it'll help you boost up your business credit scores with all 3 business credit bureaus. That's Equifax, Experian, and Dun & Bradstreet. And also, it will help you monitor your business credit scores and personal credit scores. So that's 2 things it does. It helps you build up your business credit score, and it also helps you track and monitor your business credit score. If you get the top tier program from NAV, I think right now it's about $49 per month. It's called Loan Builder. It's going to actually not only boost up your business credit score, but it's going to show you something called, it's a little technical, it's called your SBSS score. Now your SBSS score, that's a blended score between your business and your personal credit scores, okay? Looks at a lot of things. Looks at utilization, looks at your payment history, looks at the personal credit FICO score, looks at the business credit trade lines that are reporting. So you got to build up both prior to getting funding. Another good tip when you're building up your scores, and I have another video I could share with you on this, is to use net 30 vendors to boost up your business credit score. Very important that you check out that video. So third step is to find local lenders. This is really my favorite step. The reason for that is this is where you're going to find the money. A lot of the banks right now that are lending are local community banks and credit unions. That's why I said find local lenders. Most of the banks that are lending money right now are not necessarily the national banks that are out there. It's more of local community banks and local credit unions because they have their own money that they can lend, right? They have their own in-house underwriting department and they make their own decisions. They don't try to put you inside like a little tiny box, right? They will talk to you, find out what your needs are, and you're much more likely to get money from a local community bank who has their own in-house underwriting than you are through a national bank that just you either get approved or you get denied. There's no one you could talk to. With these local community banks, there's actually someone that you could talk to at the bank that can advocate for your approval. Some credit unions actually have a lending committee where they'll meet about your loan application, right? So if you're doing an online application with a national bank, most likely they're not spending as much time on your application as with the local community bank and credit union. So how do you find local community banks and credit unions that are business friendly, that are lending? What you could do is you could drive about your day and you could just kind of find local banks that maybe you never heard of and just write them down and then just simply ask them what programs that they have. Or you could use a list that we like to go off of, which is the top SBA lender list. This list is golden. They come out every single year with a list of the top lending banks. They list them and you have all of the banks in your state that are the top lending SBA lenders. So for example, there's banks on that list that I've gotten $100,000 from as a no-doc unsecured business lines of credit, and banks on that list that offer their own business credit cards. So why not use this resource? It's not that we're trying to get an SBA loan necessarily, it's just that the SBA already rated the top local banks in our area. A lot of these banks on that list you probably never even heard of, right? I have another video actually that explains this, and you can learn a lot more about that in detail in that video. So you take the SBA lender list and you call the banks and you just ask them what programs they offer to small businesses. Now, in most cases, they'll ask for 1-year tax return, 2 years tax returns, financials, things like that. And what you could ask them is there any way that they do a no-doc unsecured business line of credit? So you could ask them, hey, do you offer any business lines of credit, business credit cards? Yes, we do. Great. What are your requirements? Requirements are tax returns, financials, this, and that. You say, okay, do you have any no-doc programs? Now, about 5% of the banks that you call, not a lot, but there's millions and millions and millions of dollars in that 5%. So about 5% of the banks that you call will say, yes, if you go under 100 grand, or if you go under 50,000 or under 25,000, we can do the application as a no-doc, meaning no tax returns are required, okay? Some of you that may not apply because you'll be able to go full doc and provide tax returns and things like that. I still have a preference of low doc and no doc over full doc. The difference is full doc is 2 years tax returns, low doc is 1 year tax return, and no doc is no tax returns. So I have a preference of the low doc and no doc lenders because they are generally in a better lending environment, a better lending mood. So we get our company compliant, we set it up in such a way that banks are willing to lend to us. We build up our scores, including our business and personal credit scores, and then we find the local lenders. We find out who is lending money. We're not necessarily going to apply right away. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not, but we're building that database of local lenders and community banks and finding out who's got the money and what their programs are. We document all that information so that when we're ready to apply, we know where to get the money from. It is a lot of work, of course. Didn't say it was going to be easy, but it is worth it. And if you could use assistance with that and you prefer us to share with you our database of the thousands of banks that we've called, we've interviewed, I have a special way that we can work together. We have a database of all the local community banks and credit unions all across the US that we've interviewed. And we know which programs they offer, which programs they don't offer, who's actively lending, who's not. Because we have so many students in our database, we know which banks are giving the approvals right now and which banks are currently not. If you want to learn more about our coaching program, which includes our database of banks, you could just go to bcwcoaching.com. That's bcwcoaching.com. And you could look at a case study of how we've helped a client obtain over $500,000 in unsecured business lines of credit in just 30 days without walking into a bank. But you can also apply for coaching while you're on the page. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified when the next videos come out. Until next time, I'll see you later.